How does this audio sound? Does it sound good? Yo, what the heck? Thanks, Steve. Yeah.
Checking in for your Monday night. Gonna put on
Listen,
some real smooth jazz. Oh, I got my first caller.
listen to Radio FM here with Steve Rennick. It's a once in a lifetime to have such an honorable guest here presenting on our radio. But Steve, please introduce yourself.
You know what? Maybe tonight this is an AM radio station. Yeah. Hi, Ton. Long time, first time. When is Victoria gonna do something about the lack of public trash cans in downtown? I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
This is a political free broadcast.
Recording in progress.
Just checking audio online, thanks.
Audio sounds clear.
Thanks, David. Just checking the live stream.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the public, to staff, and to Mayor and Council. It's 7 p.m. and we are just about to begin the meeting of the Committee of the Whole for Monday, January the 19th, 2026. Before I call it to order, I just want to explain why I'm sitting here. We have a rotating system for chairing Committee of the Whole, and on that schedule, I am the designated chair for tonight's meeting. So please bear with me. We councillors get to do this occasionally throughout our term, and so it's good practice. So I will all be looking to the right for assistance from the mayor if needed. Anyway, thank you. So now I'd like to call the meeting to order by beginning with a territorial acknowledge, that we acknowledge tonight that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen peoples, known today as the Songhees Nation and Esquimalt Nation or Cossapsum Nation, and that their historic connections to these lands continue to this day. The first item of business is approval of the agenda, and before I ask for a motion, I just want to note that midway through the afternoon, the agenda had been modified and was republished, so that the order has changed. If anybody looked earlier today on council, there's a slightly different agenda for tonight, so there's been a change in the order of the items and an opportunity for public input on item 6.1. So may I have a motion for approval of the agenda? Thank you. A seconder? Say seconders. Any comments, changes? No? Okay. Then I'll move approval. Move the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That agenda is approved as presented. Next item is adoption of Committee of the Whole minutes for two past meetings, June the 16th and October 20th. We can take those together. Thank you. Moved for approval. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Appleton. Any comments, questions, additions, anything that needs to be addressed? All right. May I have all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Meetings have now been approved. Adopted, I should say. Next item, and this happens at typically at all our Committee of Whole meetings, it's an opportunity for both the mayor and council members to give verbal reports on their activities in the community meetings and etc. So we're now in item 4, and I will go clockwise to me. Yes, I guess it is still clockwise wherever you're sitting. So I'll start clockwise and start with Councillor Green, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, I'll be brief. In January, I've attended 2 meetings. One was the Oak Bay Tourism Committee meeting last Thursday night, and we were very pleased to welcome our Chief Administrative Officer, Michelle Hunt, as our guest. And it was a great meeting, and it was at Shoal Point, which was very nice, overlooking the harbor. And we're hoping to find some permanent space. We've been moving around a bit in the last little while, so I'm hoping that we will have a permanent spot again. It was formerly the Oak Bay Beach Hotel when the chair was Madon Palin, who was the GM, and that has now changed, so we'll see what happens. And the second meeting was today. I attended the South Island Reconciliation Committee meeting. Reconciliation Advisory Committee meeting in Souk, and I attended again with our CAO, Ms. Hunt, and it was a very packed meeting. I'm pleased to say that I was honored to be elected vice chair once again, and the next meeting will be in February. And in the meantime, I'm hoping that we can bring Mr. Drummond in to brief our council on updates in camera. So all of those meetings are in camera, and that's my report. Thank you. Oh, and I attended the volunteer dinner on Saturday night, which was a great success. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will go to Mayor Burdock next, please.
Sure. I mean, I have an opportunity to speak at most meetings, so I won't say anything other than just I think all members of council were able to attend the annual volunteer dinner or community dinner, municipal dinner, comes by different names. Just want to express my appreciation to particularly to Councillor Braithwaite and to Jennifer Downey from our staff to put all that together. Lots of smiling faces, and really well appreciated. For those who don't know, it's an annual dinner where people donate thousands and thousands of hours to our municipality through volunteer committees and in our parks. And it's just a small way of saying thank you to give them to host us a dinner every once a year. So my appreciation to all the members of council who are able to introduce their various committees and to all of the to all of the volunteers who give their time to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Chair. Continuing in attended regular meetings of the Greater Victoria Public Library Board in my role as trustee. The December meeting is usually a short agenda with a festive lunch, and everybody gathered together. Hadn't seen a lot of the trustees in person in a while, so that was a really nice event, and also held at the same time as some long service awards for members of the staff of the GVPL as well. So many members, that it's not uncommon to have multiple members of the staff of the library that have well over 20, 25, 35 years worth of experience. So always a really great time of the year at the GVPL. And also attended meetings of the Heritage Foundation in my role as liaison. Just wanted to extend my appreciation to you, Councillor Watson, for attending in my stead for the January meeting and providing an update. And that's it for me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much, Chair. I'm not sure when our last reporting was, so I'm not sure if it was after October 20th. Okay. So there hasn't been a meeting of the Parks, Rec and Culture in that time. However, I would like to put a shout out to thank the Parks, Rec and Culture staff for helping with the meeting, the public input meeting for Carnarvon Park, and for putting on childcare for the first time I think that we've ever had childcare at a public meeting, a public, I guess, input meeting, and that was really well received, I think. So thank you very much to Parks, Rec and Culture staff and to the building and planning staff for being there as well. I am president of the Royal McPherson Theatre Society. The AGM will be on May 1st, and at that time I'll become past president of that. But it's a great organization, and we have a lot of things going on right now. I've had a couple of meetings with the Reconciliation Oak Bay and trying to help them with finding some grants and some funding for their organization. And I really want to thank the BIA for a wonderful light up this year again, and the truck parade, which always raises such a large amount of money and food for our local food banks, and I think we should be very appreciative to our local BIA. Of course, January 1st we had the Mayor's Walk, which was wonderful. We had as has been mentioned, the municipal dinner, volunteer dinner on the weekend, and the YES Awards are coming up, which are the Young Exceptional Star Awards, on February 25th. Thank you.
Councillor Smart, please.
Thank you. I also enjoyed attending with my colleagues the municipal volunteer dinner this weekend, and really enjoyed attending the open house for Carnarvon Park, and was so impressed at the community turnout. January blues did not keep this community away from engaging, so that was such a fantastic evening. Enjoyed meeting with UVic in December as liaison to UVic. And this month, just attending many cultural events, the Art Gallery, the Opera, Dance Victoria, in my role on the Arts Commission, and looking forward to a meeting for the Arts Commission next week. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I attended some of the events that everyone else did, so I won't go back into those. However, my committee meetings all start up this week, so it's a full week. This week, or last week, I attended just the steering committee meeting of Victoria Family Court, where I assisted with preparing some of the annual report and the financial for year end. This Thursday, I will present my final presentation as treasurer to Family Court Youth Justice at the AGM, when new people will be coming in, and that will end somewhat my role with that body. There's supposed to be a 2-year limit, and I'm into, I think, year 6. So it's nice to turn the reins over to some new people to take charge of that. And as I said, the rest of my committee meetings all start up this week, and I get back into full swing. That's all.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, and I'll just say a few things. I should note to the public that in addition to all the things that the Mayor and Councillors tell you about, since we last met, by my count, there were also, in addition to those regular committee engagements and other events in the community, 11 council and special council meetings and 2 public hearings. So we have really been busy as a group, even right through the middle of December. And so thank you again to all of Mayor and Council and the community for engaging, and for staff for all the extra work that has meant. Just for me, lots of various committees that I sit on. Highlight November was the annual South Island Prosperity Partnership, always a mouthful, their annual event for the municipal partners, where we actually worked collectively as a group throughout the day on bringing forward ideas to advance the plan, the Regional Economic Development Plan, and municipalities' role in that. An absolute highlight for me in November was being able representing the mayor and council to attend the West Coast Reach We Are One concert at the David Dunnett Theatre. It was just a wonderful way to kick off the holiday season and be able to give welcoming remarks to that wonderful group of performers and their leaders, which was immediately followed by my first ever opportunity to plug in the lights for the Oak Bay Light Up. So that was, and then one other thing I will mention is that on December the 1st, the next day, on behalf of Oak Bay, I attended a briefing at CFBS Esquimalt for CRD municipalities and First Nations on the planned investments in Canada's naval fleet and, potential impacts for our region going forward. So that was a really unique opportunity, and it was well attended by municipalities, good questions, and information shared. And no secrets, really. It was really information that you would be gathering from reading media reports and what's going on with Navy and planned investments, particularly in the submarine fleet. And I think I'll end there. There were other things that I have attended with my other council colleagues, but I think that's a good time to wrap. So with that, we will move on to the opportunity in our meeting for public comment and questions. This is an opportunity for members of the public in attendance at the meeting, and there are members of the public here, or attending via Zoom or by telephone to address council regarding topics that directly impact the community of Oak Bay. Before I give the instructions for that, I just want to see if there are any members in the audience who would like to come forward and give remarks at this time. That this can only be for items that are not on the agenda and subject to public input. I don't see any hands in the audience, and I don't see anybody on my screen of people online, but staff may be able to help me there. I see one icon that I don't recognize. If you are online and you would like to address council at this opportunity, please raise your hand in Zoom, and then I'll take it from there. I don't see any hands coming up. Okay, it looks like there's nobody who would like to speak to us tonight. That's fine. So then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, corporate reporting documents. 6.1, the Bowker Creek Railing Replacement Project. Steve Rennick, Director of Engineering Public Works, will be presenting, and then there'll be an opportunity for discussion and questions and public input. So please, Mr. Rennick, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to provide an update on the upcoming Bowker Creek Railing Replacement Project. This is a project that has been in the financial plan for several years but has been deferred because of workload constraints. We intend to move forward with the project in 2026, but there are some considerations to the project that we were looking for Council's input on. There are also a couple of things that I would like to clarify about the project based on what I've read in the correspondence package. The first is that this project is really in a conceptual design stage, and that's kind of it as far as where we are in the design process. The second clarification is the scope of the project. We do intend to replace all of the post and chain railing, so not just the Bowker Creek walkway section, but also, for example, the section where the creek is quite narrow in behind Mosey, in between Goldsmith and Foul Bay Road. I also see that Council has received an alternative proposal or an alternative suggestion from Friends of Bowker Creek that lessens the amount of safety fencing being used and provides some opportunities to expand planting near the creek. I had intended that this report was primarily about what style of railing do we use, but I also recognize there are certainly other considerations, and I'm happy to take questions or feedback on the project or the creek more broadly. Mr. Soulier, the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture, is also here, and he can speak to the parks management aspects of the project. And happy to take any questions from council.
Thank you, Mr. Rennick. And so I will actually turn to my council colleagues and I'll get a speakers list going for questions to staff. Yes, anybody? Yes. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Patterson. I see you, Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I also appreciate certainly the correspondence that was received. You know, we hear from Friends of Bowker Creek continuously in all of the work they do to support the system. So, it's great that they give input on informing us about this. I do understand, though, Mr. Rennick, that I think this was a priority project for 2023. And so I understand the somewhat sense of urgency in getting it done. One thing I would like to understand, though, is how will this fit in the framework of revisiting the greater project, which would be not just the railings but the walkway system too. And so that is one aspect of it. And the other that I would like to know is what framework we have, if any, within the district, and probably not necessarily in the engineering department, but just for a consistent park and green space branding through standardized hardscaping materials, signage, and any public furniture. So and Chair, I imagine Mr. Rennick, Director Rennick has some portion of this, and perhaps Director Soulier also has a portion.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, bit of a double-barreled question. I will address the first part. The project in 2023 was not a council priority project. It was initiated by staff in response to essentially walking by and seeing the state of the railings. So it was a priority in the sense of we need to do something about it, but it wasn't a priority in the sense of being a council priority project. There is a long-listed council priority project. I believe I had the number in the staff report, which was called number 37, Expand Naturalization of Bowker Creek. And we see that project as being the very large scope, kind of like what's envisioned in the 100-year blueprint, which would actually involve removing the armoring and resloping the channels. I don't believe that's what's being discussed, and I don't believe that what Friends of Bowker Creek are proposing is on the level of that council priority project. I think that we're all trying to work here within the budget that council has created and not expand the scope of the project. And I will now turn to Mr. Soulier to address the second part. Oh, you can use your own mic. That makes sense.
Through the chair, with respect to the overall branding or quality of parks and green space in the district, I would say we have a very good history of reacting and responding, and we're trying to get better at developing longer term plans when it comes to the asset condition and standardization of assets. So when you look at park benches, for example, we have a couple of different styles out there, and some in very good condition and some in not so great condition. And so getting an inventory and a condition assessment of all of those types of assets in the next year or two is a priority for the organization, and then developing long-term plans in terms of resourcing to make sure that we maintain those assets at a standard that we develop. When it comes to the naturalization and the quality of the landscaping, in this case the naturalization effort for Bowker Creek, that's obviously been identified by council as a priority. It's been a long-standing priority for our team, and there are ongoing efforts, and you'll see some improvements that we are attempting to make in collaboration with the Friends of Bowker Creek in particular. in and around the sort of Oak Bay to Hampshire section, and you'll see some additional mulch and some signage. That's a work in progress, and as my colleague said, the longer term vision is probably several years away. But in the meantime, there are certainly some initiatives that we can work on together, and as we look to improve the current state.
Please continue.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just one other question. It could be for both of these directors. I'm not sure which, but there are two kind of options for railing systems that have been presented by staff, and I am wondering if they could put some context around it as to the visibility through the railings if you're seated versus if you're walking, because there are portions, particularly the part from Monterey right through to almost to the high school, where many times people are sitting and they're viewing from a seated level. So I'm just wondering if there's if that was considered, as well as looking at them from a standing or walking by position.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Both example photos, we did look for something that you could see through the lower level as well as seeing over the top rail. I would say that the City of Victoria example in the report, that one's maybe a little bit harder to see through from a seated position because it has that wooden railing on the top. But I do want to stress that these were just concepts. The overall idea that it would be primarily made out of metal and using wire was kind of something that we thought was attractive from a maintenance perspective, but it's very much something that I just wanted to put out to council. We don't want people looking at the fence or the railing. We want them looking through it at the creek, and that was kind of what we were trying to achieve with these concepts.
I might have one last question. I think this one is for Director Rennick, and just the fastening systems for them. Is the are the wall system that is along these portions of the creekway right now, is it in good condition to accept the installation of these railings, which would be bolted on?
Through the chair, that would be part of the detailed design process, is looking at how exactly the hardware would be attached to the top of the wall.
Thank you, Council Patterson. I have Mayor Murdoch next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just for my clarification, are there engineering standards that we have to meet for recognize the wall which is going to be there for a while longer? And I think in the report says it's around 2 meters high in most places. What is the standard there? I know there's always concerns about climbing and being high enough to prevent people falling over and things. So are there specific standards that you have to meet if it's at the top of the wall? And curiosity, if you set the wall back, say 6 feet from the edge, is that a different standard required? Or do you still need something at the top of the wall? Through your chair.
Thank you. Through the chair. The standard that we follow on this type of exterior infrastructure comes from the Ministry of Transportation as far as railings next to sidewalks. And the question is very astute. The level of railing that has to be installed is based on the distance between the edge of the sidewalk and the hazard. So, and that really comes down to both engineering standards and also potential liability risk. So in areas like the one that I referenced earlier between B Street and Fowl Bay, that's an area where you really need safety fencing because there is no room between that walkway and the drop-off. But some of the areas in the Bowker Creek walkway where the path is far away from the edge, you wouldn't per se have to have that full engineered railing in order to meet standards.
Thank you. And are those standards, would they allow for the same sort of design as we have now in terms of just posts with the chain, or do they need to be somewhat more substantial than the current standard? Do we know? Sorry, through your chair.
Through the chair, it is my feeling that post and chain railing is not a very safe standard. Whenever I look at it, I think of the perspective of children climbing on it, and I would prefer us to see something that's a little bit more robust in those areas where it's close to the drop-off.
Okay, thank you. And my last question through you, Chair, is to Mr. Soulier, Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture. I do note in the correspondence we've received was just some contemplation of wilding a substantial portion of the northern side of the creek. Has that conversation happened broadly? There's obviously some community events like the Bowker Creek Brush Up and things that happen there that use that space. It's got other public uses. I'm just curious if that conversation has happened at all. Appreciate this is kind of a bit tangential to the railing question, but obviously it's being raised and probably has some public interest. Mr. Slater?
Through the chair. So being relatively new still, I'm aware of certainly conversations with staff about some of these concepts. I was fortunate to receive a tour with some of the members of the association just before the holidays, where I learned about some of the ideas. The specific area that you're referring to, I can't recall if we talked about that, but certainly some of the areas that are identified in the sketch for split rail fencing and some native plantings to reduce soil compaction and support some of the mature trees that are in place. We did discuss those, and those certainly align with what Parks team has been focused on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next on my list, I have Councillor Braithwaite, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thanks to staff for bringing forward this and for really highlighting the safety concerns that are really apparent along that part of the creek. I really agree that action needs to be taken. When I walk down there, I go, oh yes, and I concur with what you were saying, Mr. Rennick, that I do think of children walking along there. So, but I mean, obviously, Bowker Creek's really well loved. It's a natural corridor, and we are a signatory on the Bowker Creek blueprint, and we have committed to collaboration and really long-term restoration along that creek. So my questions are meant to maybe better understand whether there's room to work more closely with the Friends of Bowker Creek on this. I'm wondering if what might be required to incorporate more of a hybrid approach. So I guess I'm wondering if there's any flexibility to perhaps have metal railings only where the path directly abuts the retaining wall, and maybe lower impact solutions where space might allow.
Through the chair, yes, I think that's absolutely a piece of feedback that we could take from council. There's certainly room to have that discussion.
Thank you, and if I may continue, Chair. And then from a safety and liability perspective, how did the split rail fencing combined with dense native planting compare to the metal railings in the lower risk areas?
Through the chair, that's a hard one to speculate on, but I would say that we would be able to kind of look at the standards and again say, well, there's a significant distance between the pathway and the edge of the creek, and there's a lot of visual barriers there telling someone, well, the pathway's over here. So I don't really want to speculate on that one without, a full discussion with MIABC, but I would certainly say that that's a fairly common approach that we see in some of the other parks in the region. I can think of, Colquitt's River Pathway, for example. It's not necessarily that high level of fencing in areas where the path is far away from a hazard.
Through you, Chair. It always surprises me how much the split rail fencing is as well. I mean, it's quite expensive, and from what I remember, what we did down at Cattle Point many, many years ago. So if Council does advance the creek's restoration work in the future, how easily would the proposed railings be modified, relocated, or removed? And I think you touched on this in your report.
Yes, through the chair, we had hoped to find something that would be relatively modular, particularly if it was a kind of more engineered post and railing system like the City of Victoria example, that hopefully some of those parts would be salvageable and could be relocated. We also thought that if there was a need in the future for railings in other locations, that maybe what we established here could be kind of a template for what we might use in other locations. Because to the earlier question from Councillor Patterson, we are not very consistent in what types of railings we're using on seawalls, for example. A lot of it is simple green 2-bar railing that's been painted and repainted 1,000 times. So there's other areas, particularly as we have the McNeil Bay erosion project that we're just underway on, there might be other areas in the district where we could use a more modern, attractive railing concept.
Thank you. And then through you, Chair, my last question. So then going along with that, does the proposed railing design support or potentially constrain the long-term restoration objectives identified for Reach 3A in the Bowker Creek Blueprint, or could you answer that?
Through the chair, I'd say it's probably too early to tell. We're certainly not looking at anything that would be terribly permanent. It would just be additional things that have to be removed while those while that channel armoring is being removed. But I don't think we can get away from having some sort of railing in the places that really need it.
Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Next, I have Councillor Smart, please.
Thank you. My primary question was asked by Councillor Braithwaite. I'm very interested in seeing how much we could proactively look at the areas that we're going to be potentially naturalizing and having those split rail fences go in early where we don't have those same fall risks. So it's good to hear that some of that hybrid approach may be possible. My other question was just with regards to the two different styles of fences and the first one, really encouraging a sense of being able to lean on it and a gesture towards here's something to see. So it's a little bit more connecting placemaking. I'm wondering with that one, does it take up more width along those narrow stretches, or is it pretty similar width? Like, are they both feasible for those narrow sections?
Through the chair, I think both of those designs are feasible. And again, they are concepts. Ultimately, they were just examples for us to work with a landscape architect or another professional. And, you know, it's not that specific look. Just really wanted to give examples. But yes, we will make sure that we get something that fits in all of the constrained areas and doesn't take away from the available walking width.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to staff, I guess my last question would just be with regards to if staff is looking for any particular motions or feedback around this today, or simply this, because it is such early stages, this kind of natural flowing conversation.
Through the chair, we were really looking for more of a flowing conversation and getting a sense of kind of what council's interest level is and use that to shape the direction that we take the project.
Thank you, Mr. Rennick and Councillor Smart. Councillor Green, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Rennick. Thank you very much for the report and the assessment of the situation as it stands. And I just wondered, is there an ongoing working relationship with the Friends of Bowker Creek? And is there a sort of a consultation model that you might be using to assist with this project? I realize this is not the redesign, this is railings only, but I just wondered if there was a consultation model that you intend to apply to working with the Friends of Bowker Creek, who have, thank you, who have certainly taken the time and effort to make their feelings known and provide some alternatives. So I'm just wondering if that is the intent, is to continue working with them as you have in the past. Thank you.
Through the chair, I would say that in the past, I perhaps did not work all that collaboratively with the Friends of Bowker Creek. There were some meetings, but admittedly, the involvement could have been more robust from the engineering department. I will say, however, that I am aware that Friends of Bowker Creek does liaise quite regularly with the Parks Department, and should there be direction from council, or should council generally support that we work with Friends of Bowker Creek, yes, we will look to establish a formal, whether it's regular meetings or we will work on that.
I really appreciate your candor on that one, and thank you.
Is that all for first-time questioners, speakers? Great, thank you. I have nothing to ask. In addition, all my questions have been answered already, raised by other council members, so thank you. Any second-time questions? No, looks like that we've been around the table. Thank you. So now is an opportunity for those in the public, if they would like to come forward and provide input on this item. This is the moment in the meeting. If you're in the room and you'd like to do so, just come forward, state your name and your place of your place of residence, and we give you 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
It's on, right? I'm Jane Evans. I live at 1777 Hampshire Road. And I did send in an email and a little sketch. And I just wanted to take these minutes to impress upon you how important and how I feel about Bowker Creek Park. And I appreciate the fact that you've said that you work with us and maybe missed our earlier correspondence. But when a few years ago, or for 25 years, I've been walking through Bowker Creek Park, and I know it's a really well-used park, and it's loved park. And what's great about it's a gem, and what's great about it is the creek. And I met Hazel years ago to talk about the fact that I felt like the creek was, or the park was looking really worn, and it needed help. And so she gave me some suggestions of how to go about seeing if other people want to improve this park. And that's when I met Friends of Bowker Creek, and then went off on a totally different tangent, and we've been working. It's been great. Been working in the creek, been restoring the plantings, been and putting in incubating eggs. It's been really fun, and I've appreciated engineering in particular, and parks have been really supportive. But when I saw the metal fencing, and we'd been trying to communicate for a few years now, although you are busy with uplands and all kinds of other things, I was thinking that this metal fencing is just encasing the creek even more. So that's where we came up with this idea, talking to parks and engineering, and looking at the areas, as Steve has said, that are set back, where the path is set back from the creek, and it's by 10, 20 feet. So you put in a split rail fence and some plantings, and it deters people, it limits people from wanting to go there. Now, yes, kids can go over there and climb in, but I've been here 26 years. I've never heard of an incident where a child or anybody has fallen in. So I would appreciate us all working together and come up with a balanced approach where we can add natural beautification to that park and safety. I completely understand why we'd have to put up safety rails in some of those areas, just as you all have talked about, and Steve. So I appreciate, and I really appreciate you asking Corrine about how, if we can be part of that consultation. So thank you, and we look forward to being consulted, working on a great balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Would anybody else like to address council? Yes, please come forward.
Thanks, Madam Chair, Mayor, and Council and staff. Ian Graham, Dean Avenue resident, speaking as co-chair of the Friends of Bowker Creek Society. You got our letter. Jane's covered the issue really well. You know, we're here to support some of our volunteer stewards and the comments that we've heard as well. Just wanted to make 2 or 3 quick points. Just if you don't know, the existing suspended fencing, it was installed in the late 70s and early 80s as part of the Bowker Creek Beautification Project. It was funded through the now defunct Provincial Capital Commission. That suspended sort of chain barrier system, it was a really popular design then. And you can see the same design gestures in other Capital Commission funded projects, same era, like the Gorge Waterway, Promenade, the Inner Harbor Causeway. And I raise this not because we're sort of entrenched in, any past design. But just to reiterate that the situation is much different than, say, replacing a pipe in the ground, right? It's really an urban design feature and part of a corridor. It's that, we call it the Emerald Necklace, conducts hundreds of people a day, has enormous ecological value. And maybe most importantly, it's the focus of a lot of volunteer effort. So, it's really encouraging. I appreciate that the Director of Parks is here, because I didn't see parks reflected in the report. And I think, just to clarify, our proposal, we're not talking about the entire length of the creek through Oak Bay. We're not talking about that section from B to Cadbury Bay. It's highly constrained. There's really very little opportunity right now until you get into the really significant, longer term stuff. You're using split rail fencing. It's already used along the creek in quite a few locations, as well as other Oak Bay parks. I won't talk about the benefits that are in the letter. One quick comment about policies. So, it is a $250,000 project, and safety, of course, is really paramount. But, we need to be looking at other considerations. We think our ideas align with Oak Bay's Cool Kit program, the urban forest strategy, the blueprint goals, the watercourses development permit area objectives, ongoing volunteer and Parks Department riparian enhancement efforts. And I'll just remind Council that, you just adopted a new official community plan, and it includes an extensive policy section on the natural environment. So you need to be kind of looking, these are big projects. It's not like a $20,000 project, looking through that broader lens. So, just in conclusion, I agree with what Jane's suggesting there is, we would just ask you to kind of encourage or direct engineering to work with the park staff and ourselves. Just explore some opportunities within that section of the Boker Creek Park. And it's a really good opportunity for collaboration. That's how we're going to have to get stuff done these days, like partnerships and a real win-win. And I really hate to see this opportunity missed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. Are there any other members in the audience who would like to speak? Anybody online? No, none of the icons have changed, so I don't think there's anybody online. All right. Thank you very much for coming forward and sharing your input with us. So back to this table. Just maybe a few kind of summarization remarks here. I think just to recap, thank you staff for your input. I think what we've heard is that we're at conceptual design stage here, that there is, in taking this project forward, there's room for a variable approach. These are some of the things I've heard, that there are multiple objectives. Certainly, safety is paramount, but also beauty and enhancement of the natural environment and good urban design principles being followed, whether they apply here and how they apply to other projects going forward. And that there is room for consultation and engagement with Friends of Boker Creek, and that staff would like to be able to do that in relation to this particular project, this focused piece of work right now on railings. So having sort of heard that, that's my recap. I turn to this body for any suggestions about how to move this forward. The recommendation had just been to receive the report, but it sounds like we might have something else we'd like to do.
Receipt.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. We've got a motion for receipt, and do I have seconded by Mayor Murdoch. Any no discussion about receipt? I don't expect, so I'll just call the question. All those in favor? None opposed.
And then I would put,
Thank you.
there's an option in the staff report in regards to what could possibly be put forward as a suggestion, and that's that the Boker Creek Railing Replacement Project be referred to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I would add, and the Friends of Boker Creek for feedback to inform the final railing design.
Second.
Thank you. Could we, were both of those things, could you just repeat those,
Actually,
please? Okay.
the one about the Accessibility Advisory Committee was in the staff report, and I have just added in the Friends of Bowker Creek. And I do feel it's very important, if I may speak to the motion, I do feel it's very important that the Accessibility Advisory Committee also be included in on this, because we want to make sure that that whole area is accessible, and that anything that we do there would not preclude anybody with accessibility issues for being able to use that walkway. And as Councillor Green has pointed out, and I think we all spoke about, I think it's important that the Friends of Bowker Creek should be available at the table to input some feedback to help us inform what kind of railing design might be the best to be using. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a live motion on the floor then, which is referral of this matter. Any discussion? Thank you. Mayor Murdoch, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have just a question through to staff on one other aspect of this. Is this also a matter of just thinking of, it was pointed out that there might be consideration of this as a standard railing design. Most of our railings are nature adjacent. Bowker Creek is not unique. Most of the things are, and I'm wondering if there's a mechanism by which there is I looked it up, can't remember now what it's called, the Community Art Volunteer Team, the ones that do the adjudication, and was the sort of Arts Laureate led piece, and now is more of a standing committee under the committee. I'm just wondering if it may be, do they still meet, or could we call them together in a way that might just seek their input? They may have some ideas about seeking additional options for design or pieces. I'm not sure what they might have to offer, but it might be worthwhile. So through you, Chair, to staff, if that's if just curious if they're still able to be called upon for asking questions like this.
Through the chair, yes, I believe they would be. We have most recently looked to that group for input on the Arts Live program in terms of the sculpture that was recommended for council for acquisition. So yes, that could be a group that we could consult with.
All right, so I might just suggest an amendment that we include the Parks, Rec and Culture Community Art Volunteer Team, which is how it's named in the piece.
Can we take that as a friendly amendment?
Well, it would still be an amendment, so we'll ask the mayor to word it, and then we'll look for a seconder.
If the mover and seconder are amenable just to add it, then that's fine. I'm not sure who seconded that. Okay. Then that would be, thank you. And then just speaking to the motion as a whole.
Could I just ask, the staff caught that, did they? Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is just to seek those input from those three groups. I don't know if there's anything else, but I think the point raised by everyone here about the sort of balance of natural spaces and access and is really important. I think it's worthwhile for us to consider this and maybe look at this as a standard for the district. I'm going to just flag as a piece so we don't forget it. Engineering knows as well, but probably Parks doesn't in their pieces, is that we do have a requirement to take out large chunks of the wall of the railing at time to allow houses to be barged off of our beaches and things. So that may just be part of the design consideration. And I'm just going to flag just for caution a little bit on the naturalization piece here without some significant consultation. And I say that just because this space is very well used. It's been 25 years of the public art Bowker Creek brush up space. 10,000 square feet is fully half of the presentation space available to that. And so I think we just have to be a bit cautious if we're making those kind of changes, that we're not doing it without some additional sort of consultation and thought as part of it. I think it's important for us to look at these kind of, adding more natural spaces and pieces. And I also would think that we also want to make sure, more than maybe just one lookout, people's valuation of this park and creek is there largely because we walk by it all the time. And if it's too far away set too far back from the public walkways and access, then we might lose some of that joy of looking down and seeing the ducklings and all the things that go on in that creek. So I just want to make sure that we're not losing that in whatever redesign we do. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have an amended motion live on the table. Any other speakers? Oh, thank you. Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair, I just wanted to take this opportunity to comment a little bit on some of the pieces around the table, and one of the pieces is the consistency and the desire to have more consistency, and I just want to provide an alternative viewpoint that I think consistency is great for maintenance, but I think consistency is not as important as celebrating the unique sense of place of each moment in our community, and I would hope if we went forward with consistency that it would be a family of different types of railings and there's discussion about street furniture too, so that we can really put what's right in that place and not just put the same railing everywhere and the same bench everywhere, because I think that can actually really take away what's special about Oak Bay, which is really the celebrating of all these unique little areas. So I just wanted to touch on that. And then I also just wanted to touch on the idea that this renaturalization of the creek might provide less amenity to the public, because I see it as actually completely the opposite. It might change the layout of the art in the park, for sure, but there's lots of space. I think this actually might provide more amenity to the community by creating like natural access to the creek, potentially the plantings and the gentle sloping I see as actually increasing the availability of natural amenity to the community. So I just wanted to provide that alternative viewpoint as well.
Councillor Patterson, please.
Yes, thank you. And I pretty much agree with everything that I've heard around the council table. And yes, I do think we have to do some branding and some grander framework, but I would hope it would be unique, because I do think even on this Bowker Creek Parkway, there are sections that have quite a heritage aspect to them, and sections that are more functional and naturalized, and so I think there is a necessity to look for the uniqueness in all aspects of the community. But I also think that we are doing this as a safety project, and a much needed safety project. It's not a section of Oak Bay that I'm proud of right now. It's looking very just Band-Aid solution, so it will be nice to move beyond that. But I think that as we, especially if we get the accessibility committee engaged on this, more of the safety concerns I get are about the pedestrian footing. So I think that this will grow into perhaps a little more informed scope of what is needed as we approach priorities too. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers to the motion? I will, if I don't see anybody, I just add that, again, we're focused here on this particular project, this particular stretch of the creek right now, and this railing at this point in time. So thank you for your input, Councillor Smart, about the forward-looking for other contexts and opportunities that need some kind of railing treatment or furniture of any sort. And I would like to echo that sentiment. I think that they are context specific, and I think that's one of the things that really does create special places, that the treatments are context specific. But right now we're talking about the narrower thing, and we have a motion on the floor which is to refer at the conceptual design stage. I guess it's slightly beyond that, but it's the design options to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, Friends of Bowker Creek, and the Arts Committee for their input. So I am ready to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Oh, and I have a question. Councillor Smart, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just didn't want to lose track of another item that came up, and I just had a motion arising potentially for Council to consider. And it's for Section 3A of Bowker Creek, for staff to return to Council at a later date with a Council priority project backgrounder regarding a future plan for grading and plantings.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Appleton seconds. yes, please proceed to
If I could
motivate.
motivate, I just really appreciated that staff mentioned that what the Friends of Bowker Creek have suggested in this plan that they have shared with us is that it's a much smaller scope of project than the current council priority project that we have set, which is a much larger one. And so I didn't want it to get lost that there's been identified through this useful community outreach from Friends of Bowker Creek, a smaller project for a specific area that came up in this report from staff that could be resolved not in a large budget project, so something fairly obtainable that could look at some plantings and sloping of that area. And so I just saw that as a smaller project that council may want to potentially consider with a project backgrounder. And I just wanted to bring it up so that didn't get lost from today.
Would anybody else like to address that? Councillor Appleton? No, you don't have to.
Not necessarily speaking, thank you, Chair, not necessarily speaking directly to that, but I was just wondering whether or not Mr. Rennick might just sort of comment on sort of the scope of that. I'm sure he would want to chip in on sort of what the scope of analysis required to produce such a backgrounder would be.
Yes, thank you very much. Through the chair, if the direction is to work with parks and to work with Friends of Bowker Creek on a smaller renaturalization of some of the areas in Reach 3A, I don't believe that is of a scope that would require a council project backgrounder. We believe that's something that we could address operationally through this project as council has directed. I just think that the timeline of bringing back a backgrounder for council's consideration, when I kind of understood that the scope of engaging on this project was not constrained just to the railing, but to the overall discussion that we had about that hybrid approach.
Councillor Smart, I see you nodding at me.
Yeah,
You may want to suggest
that's
something now.
fantastic. That's not what I had understood previously, so I'm really grateful to hear that. And I don't know if it's possible to withdraw the motion, but obviously I don't feel like it's required anymore.
Thank you. You have the seconder's consent, and that motion is withdrawn. Thank you. Mayor Murdoch, please.
Yeah, sure. Just so that we're all clear about what's being talked about here, because I thought I heard Councillor Smart mention that the resloping and things could be possible, and that's not what I heard staff. I think what I heard, what I read in the report is that is not part of this project and not an easy project and won't be going ahead. And so I just want to make sure, just because I heard Councillor Smart, sorry, but I heard you sort of say, oh, I think that's something, and then staff was saying that some of the minor work that's going on in that stretch could be dealt with. But just, I want to get absolutely clear, so we're all walking in the same order to staff with the operational piece of work that is not resloping the walls and so forth at this point. Is that correct?
Thank you, through the chair. Removing walls is not part of the operational work. Replacing the area of compacted soil with plants, we believe is operational and we believe is part of the scope of work of this project. Yes, changing the slope and removing the walls certainly would be out of scope. But I don't think that's what was being discussed, and I don't believe that's what Friends of Bowker Creek was proposing at this time either.
So okay, so we're all clear, and that's okay. Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that concludes our discussion on this item. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, staff. Thank you, members of the public, for coming to share your views with us. So that takes us on to agenda item 7.1, Infill Housing Program Update Report, and Julie Cook, our senior planner, is the staff person in charge of this. Yes. And
Yes, Chair, I will be recusing from this particular item. A close family member is involved in one of the projects listed. Thank you very much.
thank you very much. So there will be 6 of us at the table for the presentation and discussion. And we'll wish you good night then, I think, Councillor Green, because this is our last agenda item, unless you want to come back for the notice of motion to adjourn. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, we'll just wait for a second, please, Ms. Cook, until Councillor Green's been able to leave. Okay, over to you, staff. Oh, we're starting with Mr. Bull, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Our report today looks at the results to date of the infill housing program that was initiated 18 months ago. The program is based on our infill housing strategy from 2022, also the provincial requirements from 2023, and the program was adopted in 2024. After the first 18 months, we have prepared an update as requested by yourself, and Ms. Cook will walk us through a short presentation recapping the main results. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mayor and Council, and good evening. We can go to the first slide. So, I can control it, yeah. So for this presentation, first I'll give a quick summary of the applications that we've received from the infill housing program, give a quick overview of the analysis and the numbers, and then discuss some of the key takeaways. So for application summary, so under the infill housing program, we've received 27 building permit applications since July 2024. Of those, there's a construction pipeline of 84 dwelling units, which 56 are net new dwelling units. Of those 27 building permits, 18 have been issued, and that's a pipeline of 54 dwelling units and 37 net new. On average, we're receiving approximately 2 building permit applications a month in relation to the infill housing program. So this is a map of the 27 infill housing applications we received. As you can see, there's a pretty strong and good geographical spread across Oak Bay. So by zone, 59% of infill housing projects are proposed in the R5 zone, and almost all, 92%, are proposed in the R4 and R5 zone. The remaining 2 applications were in the R2 zone. So by neighborhood, as you saw on the map before, they're spread across Oak Bay. But the highest number of dwelling units that are proposed are in Henderson, followed by South Oak Bay, and then Estevan. By typology, so what we can see from the analysis is that there is quite a variation of the types of dwelling units that are proposed under the infill housing program. The most proposed units are accessory dwelling units, followed by fourplexes. For unit size, we noted a notable trend for 3-bedroom dwelling units, which account for 59% of all proposed units. So under the building regulations, just did a bit of analysis in terms of projects that kind of maximize the use of allowable building regulations. So floor area ratio, this is 22% of the projects, and for lot coverage, it's 33%. And then on the right side, for the percentage of projects that were less than or equal to 1 meter of the building height regulations, 41% were within that 1 meter for building height and 48% for roof height. For the infill development permit, so under the new OCP, there's a new requirements for 3 to 4 dwelling units to have a development permit. So 18 to 27 of the projects that we've seen would now require a development permit, and that accounts for 67% of the applications. So just some key takeaways to summarize what we've gone over. So generally, the infill housing program has been successful in encouraging a variety of forms of housing, accessory dwelling units, and fourplexes.
Yeah.
Accessory dwelling units and fourplexes are the most proposed. The majority of infill housing proposals are in the R4 and R5 zone, and most of those proposals are for 3-bedroom units, and there's a good geographical spread across the district. Staff are happy to take any questions that the chair, the mayor, or the councillors may have.
Thank you very much, staff. It was a fascinating report and a lot of work, and really appreciated the detail for each one of those projects. It really gives us a very fulsome picture of what's been going on in just a very short amount of time. Maybe just before I go to the Councillor and Mayor for questions of staff or any comments, I think I'll ask for a motion to receive the staff report. Thank you, Councillor Pattison, seconded by Councillor Appleton. Any discussion for receipt? Not seeing any as ever. I'll call the question. All those in favor of receipt? Approved and unopposed. Thank you. So now it's an opportunity. There is a lot of information in this report and some interesting analysis. So I turn to my colleagues, and if they have comments or questions for staff, please. I've got a speaker, so Councillor Braithwaite, Smart to start with, please go ahead.
Thanks so much, and through you, Chair. Yeah, I really appreciate this robust report and how well it's laid out. It was very easy to read and very easy to understand, and I really appreciate all of the proposals that are ongoing, that you could link to them really easily and see what they were. So thank you for that. My questions are mostly around staff capacity, etc. So I'm wondering how staff capacity is holding up across the planning, building, and the engineering department in relation to the current workload that you have, and is it sustainable with the existing resources? And that might not be a question, it might be a question for Director Bowl.
Let me see. That's a big question. Let me see. Next week we have a report about a lot of other topics, but specifically on this program, which to date, of course, is mainly it's building permits that come in about 2 a month. It also means that some of these permits in the past would have been single-family permits. So it's a bit of a different type of permit. So we have been learning as this program produced new applications, and I think. On its own, it's simply a small stream of new type of projects, and I think we found our way around it, and we are having an established routine between mainly the planners and the building officials looking at these projects. Engineering is indeed also involved, particularly when it comes to servicing and particularly for new builds, but even for existing situations, there's usually more water needed, and that results in upgrades. There is definitely a pressure because also we've seen other development applications increasing. So there is definitely an increasing volume for development applications, and that translates over time with some delay to increased building permits. And we have some plans in place for that. So but it's not been a big impact. It's kind of incremental and it's noticeable, but it takes time to take place. Thank you.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, you brought up the pressure points. And so are there certain pressure points that staff anticipates? And if you do, then at what stage would Council need to kind of revisit any resourcing or to help or to give suggestions for program design or something like that?
Yeah, thank you. And for you, Chair. Right now, we still have space that we already put in place as part of the 2025 budget because we are anticipating this new program. You might recall from last year that we were planning to have an additional person, particularly in the planning team, to do this work. We have still held off on securing that person. But I think it is indeed time to do that. We do think for the coming year it's going to be busy, but we're still also unsure what the market will bring. So I think it depends a bit on what the other demands on the department will be. But right now there's no changes needed this year likely, but possibly next year. Other pressure points, I think there's a lot of new regulation definitely. So we notice that ourselves, but also the applicants are still learning to all the ins and outs of the program. Most recently, changes were made in the summer. That is now, I think, become more, what's it called? Normal for everybody involved. Although I think there's still applicants that are spending some time to sift through all the requirements. So there's definitely complexity, but that's also part of why this program is customized to the Oak Bay context. It's meant to give better outcomes, and that's part of the reason for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And my last question through you, Chair. I mean, it is our new normal, I think. But taking that into consideration, and I understand that we do have it on the books to hire someone else, but in the meantime, is there any work that's being deferred or slowed or deprioritized as a result of having to support the infill housing program? Thank you.
Thank you for the chair. That's not the case. No, this is specifically a staff team or a group of staff that specifically looks at development applications. Thank you.
Great. I have Councillor Smart and then Mayor Murdoch.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to staff. My first question is just with regards to with so much empathy, the time frame to review these applications. It was really helpful to hear that on average it's been 16 weeks before having a DP process. And I wondered, does staff have any sense of the anticipated average review time now that we will have this extra layer of DP process? Like, can we expect that the review of these applications, understanding it will change depending on how many applications there are? Is it expected that we're on a trajectory to improve those timelines or inevitably have them be longer because now the process is more involved?
Through the chair, that is kind of two answers to that. The 16 weeks is reflective of current building permit review times, and they're quite high. We do want to bring them down to about in the past 6 to 8 weeks was the level we're comfortable with, and that requires us to get fully staffed again in the building team where we had 2 vacancies last summer out of 3. That said, the new development permit requirement will apply to certain projects. It requires its own review process, and that's where there's also other development applications that need to be reviewed. So we think that the time frame for a staff delegated development permit is about 2 to 4 months. So it means that if we're at the 2-month mark, or if there's some lead time and the application might be made before the building permit application is made, it doesn't need to cost extra time. But if it's 4 months because it's busier, or maybe they got simultaneously applied for, then it will take a little bit longer, because then by the time that the building permits are faster, the development permit is probably the process that takes the most time. Because in that process, we haven't confirmed it with you just yet, but we anticipate there would be an advisory design panel review, and then combined with the staff review, that would come to the director for review and for decision. So that's still a much more fulsome process than a regular building permit. Thank you.
Sorry, if I may just ask a point of clarification, because I just blinked there for a second. Would you repeat, was that time with development permit and building permit, or was it an additional 12 weeks just for the development, or 12 to 16 weeks for the development permit? I didn't follow that.
Thank you. Yes, I was throwing around a lot of numbers. So in the 2 to 4 months process for the development permit, that's where the ADP review is, and staff review, and possibly some back and forth with applicants to make sure that the plans can be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Smart. Thanks for your indulgence there.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to staff, my next question was with regards to parking design, and this was such a great opportunity, and thank you so much for the map so that we could go out and look at each house as under construction, as well as see the plans and the pictures. That was really helpful. And so my question is, in comparing the design guidelines that we worked together to create for the OCP, and looking at the projects that have been presented to us so far, I see that there are some projects that look potentially like they won't have an enhanced streetscape, and by that I mean that the cars will be visible without screening in front of them in some cases, and in some cases there'll actually be physical garages in the front yard. And I wondered, could staff just comment on whether the design guidelines that we have in the OCP, that staff feel comfortable that we'll be able to have enough content in those to really work on the streetscape element of concealing parking in the front yard, versus is that something that we might be dealing with in the zoning bylaw when that comes to us later. So I'm just wondering what staff's comfort level is to ensuring that we're not moving forward with infill housing in a way that is going to create a lot of cars parked in front yards. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Through the updated guidelines in the OCP for the infill development permit area, there are a number of guidelines relating to parking and how it interacts with the street. So under the site planning and building guidelines, parking pads are to have a minimum intrusion on pedestrian use of the street with landscaping of parked areas. And the landscape guidelines calls for predominantly vegetated front yard. And there's also access and parking guidelines about minimizing the paved parking areas in the front yard, locating parking in the rear or side yard where possible, as well as encouraging access from laneways where accessible or possible. So there's quite a few guidelines that speak specifically to this. I think the first one I mentioned about the minimum intrusion on pedestrian use has a specific wording regarding with landscaping of parking areas. So, I mean, I personally find that, yeah, that might be a bit not as clear there, but I do think there are guidelines that speak to this. But if council wishes, there could be some amendments to the wording to make it clearer.
Thank you. I appreciate that fulsome answer. My next question was just with regards to three-story flat monolithic sides of buildings. And the question is, again, in reviewing the design guidelines that we've put forward in the official community plan, there was a lot of emphasis on, of course, the front facade, which is really important and something I'm really happy to see us going forward with improving that condition. I'm just wondering if staff feel, again, that the wording that we have in the development permit guidelines will give staff enough ability to work with applicants to ensure that we're not having these monolithic three-story flat facades, particularly on the sides of buildings, or if it would be helpful to have some direction from council to further modify the guidelines to ensure that we can deal with that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yeah, so as you mentioned, Councillor Smart, there are some guidelines related to kind of the monolithic wall facing the streetscape. There are a number of guidelines that call for new development to be consistent with the existing character on the streets of the buildings and the siting. But there is no specific wording related to monolithic or flat walls in relation to side yards, just the streetscape. So specifically, there is a guideline to avoid large expanses of uniform materials and flat, monotonous facades facing streets and public open spaces. So it's quite specific to facing streets and public open spaces, and there isn't anything specifically that kind of speaks to that treatment of a flat, monotonous wall in relation to a side lot line.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to staff, just to follow up on that, then if council was to put forward a motion to want to add that to the development permit guidelines, is that possible at this point to add some wording that could go forward with this sort of current set of amendments that are going through another public hearing process with regards to the OCP? I'm just wondering if that is possible tonight.
Through the chair to Councillor Smart, obviously the amendment bylaw that staff are currently preparing will be presented to council on January the 26th for consideration of first and second reading, and so at first reading council could make changes to that bylaw if that's the will of council. You know, I think the other thing that's worth mentioning, at that January the 12th meeting, council also passed a motion to bring forward an amendment bylaw to the development applications procedure bylaw in due course, and so later this quarter or early Q2 we'll be bringing that amendment bylaw forward, and on January 12th council also asked for an update report within 24 months in terms of how that infill DPA that is delegated to staff is working, and so there is a further opportunity down the road as well to potentially, if staff identify that the guidelines are missing some crucial guidelines or need to be tweaked in some shape or form, then that would also be the opportunity for staff to present to council some further revisions to those guidelines, or to seek direction from council to amend those guidelines to amend certain things that we are seeing in the review of those applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Councillor Smart?
Thank you. I just had one final question through you, Chair, to staff, and it was just if it's possible to remind Council what the additional cost will now be to applicants for these types of projects due to the DP process. I wasn't sure, and I'm not looking for specifics so much as just a general sense of, is this a 1% on construction cost, or do you have any sort of tangible information you can provide us just to give a sense of the cost now to applicants now that we have this extra process?
Through the chair to Councillor Smart, so under a planning and development fees and charges bylaw, a development permit would be $2,000, and then if there was a variance, it would be $2,500. We recognise that that bylaw may need to be amended in the future to reflect the updated OCP. That bylaw hasn't been updated since 2023, and so we do know that there is not only a need to review that, given that it's 3 years old this year, but also to reflect the updated OCP that has slightly different requirements for development permits than previously, as well as recognising, first of all, the delegated DVPs that Council adopted in November, as well as a delegated DP, and so we'll be doing a review of those fees and charges, and we'll be hopefully bringing a report back with a bylaw later this year in relation to those fees and charges.
Thank you. That's everything.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Next on my list, I have Mayor Murdoch and then Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. We've had a motion on the floor already. Is it possible just to make some comments? I have a very limited amount of questions.
I don't think we have a motion on the floor. We received the report.
Yeah, we've had that motion to receive.
Oh,
so
yes,
yes. Can I speak? I didn't speak during the motion.
Oh, absolutely. Please, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just a couple of observations, and I think I want to thank staff for the report. It's really interesting to see everything laid out there in terms of the actual buildings. It's interesting what people are taking up and where it's being maximized, about how sort of all of them are maximizing lot coverage, but not less than half are maximizing height, building height and roof height as these things go through. And I found it very fascinating. And I think if my observation here is that the infill's working, pretty darn well in some areas and probably a little less positively in others. I think interestingly the maximum height and the blank facades seem to be sort of mid-block, sort of David Eby specials, so sort of high and vertical in the middle of the block, and the ones in the corner seem to be working really well in terms of fitting into the neighborhoods. And it's interesting to sort of see that. I do think that there might be worthwhile, just hearing some of the questions already, that we might just do a bit of a review of this, to maybe sort of look at tweaking some of the aspects of it. I think some of the questions there around the development permit fees, the possibility of if we can tweak the zoning a bit more, we may not need the development permit pieces. And I'd share that certainly my strong preference is to have really good zoning and then not rely on and letting people build within those frameworks. So I would love to see us work towards a development permit free part for infill if we can get there. So I'd be interested in getting in that as a little project to see if we can kind of just learning what we've learned so far to tweak some of the zoning pieces. I was contemplating as part of that to perhaps just ask, I think what I recognize is that and what I heard was that the work plan prioritization from building and planning is coming back next Monday. Is that through you, Chair? Is that correct? Seeing nods, so I'll say just read it to the record. Yes. Is it possible, like, if we were contemplating sort of perhaps doing a bit more work on this, just having some to have that as a potential project in that work plan is part of that report? Because I wouldn't want to say that's important enough to prioritize it, but I think that it would be interesting to see where it might fit in the context of all the other projects that we have in this term. So I'm just curious if there were a motion just to include sort of, I guess, time, staff, and impact of doing a review. If we could at least include that in the report. So maybe through you, Chair, and I'm not sure if you can answer that question or not. I appreciate it's late in the day for that report.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks. There is already one council resolution that's for asking for further changes, which are remainder changes that were discussed in previous iterations but not made just yet, and they're kind of parked for this earlier part of the year. So in addition, if there's other direction today or considering to maybe bring it back next week, we would have very limited time to delve deep into it, but we could give some thought to what it would mean to if that were a council priority project, and then either comment on that next week. Thinking, yeah, there could be follow-up discussion next week on that basis. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. And I'll just seek a little clarification through you, Chair. So I think I want to make this as minimally impactful as possible. So is this, and again, my sneaking suspicion is that when we look at this in the context of all the other work we're trying to get done this year, it might not creep to the top of the pile. But I just want to get a sense of that. So what I thought I heard staff say, Chair, was that there was one of the potential pieces of work is continuing to do some work to fine tune and modify the infill zoning. And that that could be an opportunity for looking at this a little bit more broadly and considering other changes based on this report and some of the impacts. So through you, Chair, is that sort of what I'm hearing? Is that it easier to add it onto that project than perhaps have a separate project?
Yeah, thank you, through the Chair. Yes, because there's already some other work. It's not been directed yet, right? So there's a list of remaining items from the previous tables, if you remember. There was a table 2 and table 3 in July. So yeah, if there's other ideas that come out of this discussion, they could be added to that, and it could be looked at in one go, so to say. It's not at the level of council priority project at this point. That would be a council resolution that would be followed up on when time is available, but we are slowly but surely working through council resolutions. It does depend on the extent of the analysis or the changes that council would like to consider. Yeah, that's definitely an option. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand that that potential. Then it might be easier to talk about it when that report comes through. So let me think about that. If there's this potential motion to kind of give some more clearer direction, I guess I'll just speak to this. Really, is that my hope is that as we do this iterative work, and I think things that we learn through these kind of reports is that how do we tweak our bylaws and things so that we can get away from relying on more sort of more staff-heavy and time-consuming things like development permit and guidelines and so forth. I appreciate, we just passed that in the OCP. Those things are there, but I think we should be working towards that if we can, and so I'd like to make sure that we're considering that at least as part of the staff work plan for next year. I'll take that away for now and let other people speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the staff. Thank you very much for the report. I think it's a great start at giving us a snapshot of what is happening in the community and how these things are rolling out, and undoubtedly it will be refined as we go along. There are a couple of things so that I will just make as suggestions perhaps, and that one that I do note, we consistently talk about vehicles, and obviously they have a lot of impact on the developments that take place, but I can't help but notice that there is a multiplex development that is almost nearing completion on Cadboro Bay Road near Lansdowne, where if you're a pedestrian, the only way out is to run across Cadboro Road, which is very wide and very busy, or cut through your neighbor's yards to somehow get to Lansdowne or another street, because there's no sidewalks. And I understand in communities like Oak Bay and certainly even in Saanich, there are many areas where this is the case. There just weren't pedestrian sidewalks installed. So I think that is something that we will have to, as a community, be well aware of, because I think the success of infill hinges on strong community integration, and so we do have to work with the community we have, but perhaps nudge it towards the community that we want it to be. And so I would also hope in the future in this report, and some of it I can certainly do by looking at the numbers, but I think an important component of this will be the demolitions that occur, because a number of demolitions that occur in order to enable it affect the community in a different way than accessory dwelling units do or multiplexes do if a lot has been subdivided. So I think that adding number of demolitions so that we can sort of see the changing character of the community, and also there's an environmental component to the demolition waste. And the other item is that the infill should have an effect in some way on the value of properties that are available. We talk about whether they're 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, and somewhat the use, but certainly the integration of the community will also be important, I think, for council to know. For example, if we introduce high-end townhouses into predominantly modest single-family neighborhoods, it can signal certainly reinvestment, but it can also contribute to affordability pressures and potential displacement. So I think that those are just aspects of perhaps enhancing the reporting that can give us, as members of council, more of a feeling as to the impact on the community and understanding how we are transitioning through this. So just a couple of suggestions that I'd like to make. But I think this is a great start at summarizing where we stand today, and it's a great snapshot of how this is rolling out. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Before I had a couple of things I wanted to mention myself too. You're all right? Okay. You're okay? Good, thanks. Yes, thank you. I really actually enjoyed going through it and looking at each application that's come forward individually to see the patterns which have come out in the analysis, of which there are not. It's really quite ranging. There's a lot of variety in what's going on. The only pattern is really that it's generally happening in R4 and R5 neighborhoods, which I think is very interesting. And I wonder to what extent that relates to land value. But it is a question that maybe we can't analyze, but it's an outstanding question for me. Following up on the mayor's comments, one thing that really did strike me at the end of the day is that having just adopted development permit requirements for this, that would apply to, I think it was 2/3, I think Ms. Cook said, 2/3 of the applications that came forward. That's a big change in timelines and intervention in terms of allowing housing to move forward. And I know that in our initial round of discussion when we first were looking at infill, we deliberately stayed away from development permits because we did not want to thwart the ability to add small-scale housing expeditiously in our community. And we may end up doing exactly the opposite with the application of development permit guidelines. So that's something I would want to watch as a council very closely because it has both, of course, time and cost implications for applicants. My one other concern, just looking at, we were talking about fine-tuning our zoning framework, and one thing that did strike me about at least one of the applications, and it also exists elsewhere already, but because of the way that FAR is calculated, we've got projects that come well below the maximums because the secondary suites are 8, 9, or 10 feet below ground. And I ask myself the question if that really is the kind of style and quality of housing that we want to be, in effect, encouraging because of the way that framework works. So that was an outstanding question for me in terms of any kind of review. These very deep basement apartments are, in spite of best attempts to bring in light through light wells, are actually not very pleasant places to be. You really feel like I've been in a few of them, you feel like you're in a bunker. You've got light, but it's, and we may, because of land economics and the FAR calculation, be encouraging that in a way that we might want to rethink. There may be better ways to address that. So that would be one thing I would have on the table if we're having a review. But with that said, I wanted to turn back to the mayor to see if you wanted to add anything, because it sounded like there was an opportunity here to just embellish possibly the work that will be done under council resolution to look at the infill zoning, and I wanted to make sure that we feel that staff have direction they need, or if we decide we need any kind of formal motion to move some of our concerns tonight into that piece of work. So go back to you first, Mayor, because you raised it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I'll try a motion, and it's maybe a little kludgely worded, but I'll try. Just that staff include a project option within the upcoming 2026 work plan prioritization report, which is coming next week, for a project to consider modest changes to the small-scale multi-unit housing zoning bylaw regulations that may include just things we talked about here, sort of option. Oh, actually, one other piece that we hadn't talked about, but has been a point of discussion in the community. So one, just options looking at above-ground massing for mid-block buildings, looking at zoning changes to remove the need for development permits and guidelines. Development permits, I guess, would be the piece of there. To review development permit fees, and look at the allowed number of occupied buildings on lots. And that one we haven't talked about tonight, but has been a point of raised where we hadn't, we're contemplating the idea of having, and I think there's one option in this list that has 3 different separate buildings on it, but most of them, we're starting to see a couple of other applications being contemplated. And we haven't really discussed that as a zoning. Sorry, I'm rambling on. That was the motion, and if someone seconds it, I can motivate, but I don't think I need to say much more.
Got a seconder from Councillor Patterson. Thank you. Please go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, I guess all I would just say, I know community building and planning has more projects than staff time this year, and so I don't want to dictate, what should be worked on. I think this could be, if this, all I really want is just to have some sense of what the impact of that would be to look at this year. So if they can come back in the report next week, then if it's something that council sees as being in the priority, then we can get into the weeds of what it should actually include. But I list those things there as at least examples of things that we might look at, and based on what I heard here. So this isn't really, I'm trying not to say we should do this, because I don't know that this really is a top priority, but the motion would just be, can you just give us a sense of how much time impact this would have, and then we can contemplate the importance of it next week when we look at all the other potential projects that are on the books. And I'll read that aloud. Just that staff include a project option within the upcoming work plan prioritization report for a project to consider modest changes to small-scale multi-unit housing zoning bylaw regulations. And in fact, that should probably be the motion, really. And everything else is just some examples of things that might be in there.
Thank you. And it sounds like we actually heard some other things around the table too from other councillors, so I know staff have been making note of that. We have a motion live on the floor with a seconder. Any discussion around the table?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this coming forward. I'm a little conflicted about whether to support it, because I already am aware of how many hard choices we're going to have to make just next week. And I almost don't want something else on that list to have to put off. And I have to say, even though it felt like a long time to wait to have this report, I saw such value in giving this program the time it needed to see some examples, to see what worked, to see what needed some help. And I feel like it's a bit too early to look at this again. And I was comforted with what I heard from staff today to address my concerns. So I don't think I will support the motion, but I appreciate where you're coming from.
Any other speakers? I'll step in. I think that in this case I agree that time does matter. in terms of seeing what comes forward, and that it, rather than identifying a bracketed piece of work that may or may not be able to proceed immediately, that it makes more sense to wait longer. Particularly with respect to development permits, they could be a real obstacle, but we may actually see going forward that we get things where we really benefit from the discussion and engagement that we get from the advisory design panel, because we're using that tool. And I wouldn't like to discard it until we've tested it and we learn those things that we've already learned around timing for this first batch, this first 16 months worth of applications. So in some ways, in a way, I could vote for the motion, and then it comes to us next week, and we do nothing with it. But I am, conscious that even in doing that, we're giving staff some work that they have to do this week to think about how they would present that to us in a week's time. Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but I can see some benefits, as Councillor Smart is saying, of actually waiting and gathering more information before we change the scheme too much, because we've learned a lot, but there may yet be quite a bit to learn. Anybody else like to speak to the motion on the floor about getting a report, having a project developed to look at this, and that staff, work prioritization report to consider modest changes to the zoning bylaw. Yes, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I supported it because I am taking the mayor in reading that we are not wanting we're not giving a lengthy, involved task to the staff, but this could be an opportunity for our building and planning staff to revisit this, so that if there are small tweaks that they can make to it that will actually aid their workflow, aid the process. That's their opportunity to come back and tell us that with what they know today. And it may be too much, and then of course it will probably drop off with all of the other priorities that we will have. But I think it's worthwhile to do that, just the check and balance, to give our building and planning staff the opportunity, if there are some small tweaks that will aid their work, that they can then make that case to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any other speakers? Councillor Appleton, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm willing to support this at this time, because I think that staff have gotten a read on what it is that sort of council is looking for in this regard. I think there's a number of individual items that could fall within this aegis, and not necessarily all of them are individually supportable, but I think that they're good to discuss in the larger scheme of things. I will support it at this stage of the game, because I think, to Councillor Patterson's point, there is an interest here in improving and streamlining process, and essentially getting more housing built. The crux of this and the intent of this is to get more housing built. And because of the way that the approach taken in the recently passed OCP, infill housing is a key component of making our housing targets, and the report is clear that we're not doing it. So we need to we have a responsibility to look at any and all process improvements and streamlining that can help us get more housing built, because the housing that is getting built, as revealed by this project, is diverse and serves a bunch of different uses and is accessible to different people. We simply need more of it. So I think that this provides us some additional information for discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think we've had a good discussion of this. We have a motion on the floor. I'll just repeat it. That staff, right, yes, I'm going to read it. That staff include impact information with the upcoming 2026 work plan prioritization report for project to consider modest changes to SMU zoning bylaw regulations, period. Thank you. So I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you very much, staff. takes us now to the new business item on our agenda. Is there any new business? Seeing no new business coming forward, that now takes us to the end of the agenda and call for
Move
a motion.
adjournment.
Motion
Hardly
to
ever get to
adjourn.
say
Yes,
that.
okay, right. The mayor moved adjournment. I'm sure I have a seconder. Thank you. All those in favor? Approved. Thank you. None opposed. Thank you very much, everybody.